Hi there, APUS historians. So, been getting a lot of the same questions, so I figured why not just put out some info. Want to make sure that you guys are in the best position to do well in the AP exam. Okay, it's coming up. So I'm recording this Wednesday night, so you got a day and a half. Okay, so first thing, right? A lot of people are having logistical questions about the exam itself. So under the class website, under review, okay, I added a link here, AP exam day of exam. Okay, so again, it's going to be at 1 o'clock. Show up 30 minutes early, and you're just gonna, you should have today gotten an email with your e-ticket, so make sure that you have that. Okay, that there's going to be a link within it. You click on that link, you enter in your AP ID number. You'll see a little timer saying when the exam starts. Okay, and then the question will automatically appear. Okay, and it's go time. So you got 50 minutes, 45 minutes to take the test, and then 5 minutes to submit it. Okay, hearing from some other AP students, they were having issues taking pictures and uploading them because of like file formats. Don't even mess with that, right? You are given the gift of being able to type this exam, type the thing. Okay, my recommendation is just copy and paste it up so you don't have to worry about file formats. Okay. And one other thing the students were saying is just make sure when you copy and paste over that your name and your AP ID number are in there, right? They recommend using Chrome. You can use your class notes. Oh, okay. So the two things, like if you have too much stuff, like textbooks, notes, all that stuff, it can become overwhelming with all the stress when you're taking this thing. Okay. So the two things I recommend that you have is the list of AP terms, okay, which I've shared with you. Okay. This is pulling up a different one here. It's loading. Okay. I highly recommend print out this. So that way you're not scrolling and scrolling and scrolling or switching tabs and that sort of thing. Okay, and then you're like, okay, the question's on period 4, toss the rest of the papers and then just look at period 4, right? The other thing I recommend that you have is the rubric. Okay, I just shared that with you. Okay, it's in your S2 AP US History folder as well. That's going to be helpful to make sure I hit all of these, because you can write a phenomenal essay, but if you don't do these things, you're not going to do well in the AP exam, okay, because this is what they're grading you on. Okay, so with that, okay, just want to walk you through how I would tackle an AP exam. Okay, so now all of a sudden time has started, stress is kicking in. First thing, read the question, okay, and make sure whether it's in your mind or on paper next to, write down like, what is this question asking me to do? Okay, so the first thing is figuring out what is the skill that they're assessing. Okay, so it's one of three things. It's either continuity and change, causation, which is the greatest causes of a historical event, or it's going to be compare and contrast. Okay, so in this case, evaluate the extent to which progressives foster political change. Okay, so this is continuity and change. So I would stress that here. Make sure you're hitting both here. Basically, your entire essay should be talking about and arguing what stayed the same and what changed. Okay. Now, with all of this, right? So in this case, they're talking about political change. Okay, so make sure you stress like what you're talking about. Okay, so you're not going to talk about economics. You're not going to talk about just like the breaking up of big business. Okay, but more from a political standpoint, right? You're not going to talk about like social movements for that extent, okay? Because you're not answering the question. And then the third component here is check the dates, right? There's a reason why they picked like benchmark dates or bookmark dates, right? So 1890, this is like kind of the end of the populist movement, but you're going to see some of those populist ideas fulfilled by the progressives. And then 1920, I mean, that's kind of culminating with the 20th Amendment. Right, and after that, it's like roaring 20s. It doesn't really look like anything from the progressives anymore. Okay, so now it's like, okay, I know what the question's asking me. I know what the skill is. I got to quick go through the documents, right? So remember, there's going to be 5 documents on the exam. Now you only have to use 4, right? So figure out how you want to kind of do that. But my recommendation is, if you have time, do all 5. Okay, that way, if you miss on a document, you got another shot at it. Okay, so now I got a quick look through the documents, and again, you decide, okay, how you want to tackle this. Okay. If you haven't taken the AP practice test online, I sent that in a link for my weekly email. Please do that. Okay. I don't want you figuring this stuff out of like, can I highlight the text or do I need to like write notes on the side? I don't want you figuring that out the day of the test when you're already stressed enough. Okay. So in this case, I don't know if you're able to, but I would highlight the text, right? Just real quick, like, what is this document about? Okay, so in this case, this is, I'm like, bam, Jane Addams, Hull House. Okay, and she's saying that ultimately, like, this is a powerful alderman who's corrupt. He's basically handing out jobs in exchange for votes. Okay, and she was not successful in like dealing with this character here. So then this would be continuity, right? That's how I'm going to use this document. Then it's like, okay, what else can I connect this to? I'm thinking like urban political machines, Boss Tweed, okay? That sort of political corruption might be potential outside evidence I can throw in, right? Then Doc 2, it's like, okay. So they want you to put like, your thesis needs to be into categories. So that's talking about like local politics. So in that case, kind of a failure. But here it's like, okay, you have President Theodore Roosevelt talking about the great corporations, okay, but they need to be supervised. This is a substantial change. Now remember, like the populace, that's from a grassroots movement from the ground up. Okay, here you have the federal government breaking up corporations, right, and busting trusts. Okay, so that's a substantial change, and that's how you're going to use this document. Okay, then as you get into Doc 3, it's juvenile offenders, right? So talking about, in this case now, the creation of, one, the entrenchment of public school systems, but also just how they're viewing the youth. Okay, so in this case, not so successful in dealing with like political corruption and the spoils system. Okay, but successful in their criminal justice system of reforming that. So notice here how I'm putting them into categories that could potentially form my thesis. And it's like, all right, Doc 4, now they're talking about, I see the term recall, direct democracy given to people, right? This is something that was suggested by the populace, but comes to fruition by the progressives, okay? And then here, this is the NAACP writing to Woodrow Wilson about ultimately, segregating the federal government. Okay, so then I could think, all right, what outside pieces of evidence connect to this? Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. Okay, so when you use outside evidence, okay, remember, okay, you need to use HAP for 2 documents. You need to use outside evidence for 2 documents. Okay, your outside evidence and your HAP need to be specific. So if you're going to throw in, this is like Plessy versus Ferguson, you need to demonstrate to the person grading it that you know what Plessy versus Ferguson did. Okay, so it's like, Plessy versus Ferguson, which established separate but equal, or that it was legal to segregate so long as facilities were equal, basically then allowed for this political change here. Okay, so then once you have that, you have to then group the documents, right, of how you want to kind of fit them into what categories. Okay, my recommendation, your intro paragraph is going to have your context. Okay, the one thing I'm seeing is your context needs to be specific to the time period. So it can't just be, I'm going to talk about the Civil War, and I'm going to talk about like imperialism. Like, what the heck does that have to do with the progressive movement? Okay, you could talk about the populace and this grassroots attempt and its failure culminating in the election of 1896. Like, that's relevant. Okay, and then the progressives taking on some of those ideas. Okay, then you try your thesis, but again, you're not going to know where you're going with this paper until you've written the thing. So try and put it in your intro, but then take a second attempt at it in your conclusion. Okay, your conclusion can be like 1 sentence, okay, because there's no conclusion element to the rubric. Okay, so again, if you can, do 5 docs. Make sure that you're hitting all the elements of your rubric. Okay, so as I've said, thesis. Make sure that you're not just, don't give me the economic, social, political stuff. Okay, put them into specific categories of how this is showing change or how this is not. Okay, context needs to be relevant. And then here, using 4 documents, I recommend 5, 2 pieces of outside evidence. And then remember I mentioned as far as the HAP element, don't bother with the rest of them, do historical context. Okay, and then the complexity part, this is the nuance of making sure that you're explaining both similarity and difference, or in this case, continuity and change. Okay, this is like, I think Heimler said it's like 5% of AP students get to this point. Okay, so take a swipe at it, but don't stress over it. That's going to be kind of the nuance, the art of writing, of making sure that you're like connecting the documents together. Which leads me to kind of last point. Don't just go doc 1, doc 2, doc 3. Okay, see how these things are grouped together. Okay, so that's it for right now. Let me know if you have questions or if you need specific tips or pointers or want me to work with you. Okay, definitely. I have a couple slots open as far as Google Meets if you want to meet tomorrow. And good luck, AP historians. You guys got this.